Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very inspiring show coming right up with special guest Ariane de Bonvoisin. And she's here today to share with us her new children's book series, You Are Loved, Giggles and Joy, and Being You. Now, Ariane writes, coaches, and speaks frequently on the topics of personal and professional change, happiness and inspiration, entrepreneurship, women in the workplace, parenting, and the topic of mindful living and conscious business. She is passionate about helping raise healthy, happy, conscious, and empowered kids. Ariane has appeared on dozens of TV and radio shows, including MSNBC, The Today Show, CBS Early Show, CNN, ABC, just to name a few. So let's welcome our special guest, Ariane de Bonvoisin.
Thanks, Marianne. It's great to be on with you.
Oh, it's fabulous to have you here. I've been so looking forward to this conversation with you because, my goodness, as I browse through all the work that you've done and continue to do, it seems that you are really on this mindful path and helping people get to a different level in their consciousness.
Yeah, it's been interesting. I feel like I've had a few paths. I had a very sort of traditional, conservative, conventional path growing up. 6 countries, 3 continents, parents that really focused on education and safety and getting a good job and fitting in. And so I did that for sort of a chunk of my life till my early 30s. And then I realized that that really wasn't my path. And then I had to sort of go inwards more for my answers than outwards to them or what the world had told me to go get. I had a lot of what the world told me would make me happy, and it actually didn't make me happy. So I think now if I could sort of just, summarize where I'm at, it's really to have a foot in both worlds where, neither world is wrong, neither world is better, but to sort of, live a spiritual path, be committed to, my spiritual conscious growth, but also fully be in the world and also fully contribute and make money and have work and have sex and have a husband and have children, and to not have it be an either or. And for me, for a while, it was like, oh my God, either I'm going to make money or I'm going to be this super spiritual person. Either I'm going to have a family or I'm going to continue to work. And it's really, I feel like all these worlds are merging for me, and more people are becoming, very conscious and spiritual while still being very much in the world and having a big life.
It's so important that people hear that, because there really is so much pressure, especially on young people today, to go out. You're supposed to do all these things. And, I applaud you for saying, you know what, gosh, this isn't really feeding my soul. I think I'm going to stop and make adjustments as I go. It takes a lot of insight and courage to do that, because it's a really scary thing for a lot of people to move from where they currently are to the unknown, to follow really their growth of their spiritual growth and their just evolution of their consciousness.
Yeah, I'd say it was sort of my defining story was, a lot of people go, oh my God, how did you do it and how did you know? I was engaged at the time as well, so I had professional and personal, commitments in place that I thought I should do and I should follow through. And yet my intuition, or what I friendly call my inner microphone, it was actually getting louder and louder, and it would wake me up every morning. You're in the wrong job. You're sleeping with the wrong guy. And I'd be like, just go away, be quiet. But thank God that voice, you can turn it pretty low, but it never really goes away. And I just got tired and exhausted of having these 2 versions of myself, this external version and this sort of in the spiritual closet version, where those 2 didn't seem to be possible together. And, I know now, having come on the other side of it, that they're fully possible to be integrated. And I did break off the engagement. I did leave, a very big job here in New York City. And I didn't really know what was next, but I knew a few things. I knew what was missing. I knew that was not where I was going to get my fulfillment. And I knew that I needed to take some time to go inwards as opposed to keep adding to my external life. So I traveled and I read books and I looked for teachers and I did workshops and, I did a lot of what I naturally was being called to do, but I really didn't know that it would ever land to, children's books or helping, companies or adults with life skills or a mindful app, or that I was not allowed to see. What I was allowed to see was the first door, which is you need to leave your job. And this is not the right man for you. He is right for someone else. That was the only first door I could see. And it's hard because you want to see behind doorway 34. But really, you're given the first door. And then there's always another door that's presented to you.
Do you think that we have to, when it's set that way or it kind of feels that way, because we have to have faith in spirit that, I'm going to walk through this door and the next thing's going to unfold?
Yeah. Well, it is. It's a lot of, I think it was Einstein said it much better than I did, which is the most important decision and question you'll ever ask yourself is, do I live in a friendly, supportive universe or not? And, you can tell people, just looking around, does this person feel like life is on their side or life is against them? Life is conspiring for good or life is constantly, pissing me off, upsetting me, I'm a victim. And you can literally split people, including yourself, into those. And, it took me a while to sort of just jump on okay, this doesn't feel good, it doesn't look good, none of this appears to be good according to the mind. And yet this is the path that I'm on and I'm going to say yes and I'm going to accept. And, when you stop kind of asking for answers that are not possible for the mind to even have and comprehend, I feel like you get more into the flow of where life is trying to take you. But it is, you do need to feel like there's a container and there's for me, that's definitely my spiritual path. I'm just feeling like, I'm loved and I'm guided and I'm protected. And I teach that to my 4-year-old because you don't always feel it from your parents. But when there's a bigger container around you, that is always there and it never leaves you. It's like the fish being in water. It doesn't know that it's in water. I think as humans, we don't know that we are in sort of an energetic, conscious place in the universe that, is loving, is supportive.
Yeah. You're so right about that, because a lot of times when I first had some, that question brought to me, do you feel this is I'm kind of ad-libbing here, but like the universe that really cares for you, that's going to support you. It took me a minute to really kind of go, I don't know. And I think a lot of people kind of start off that way.
Yeah, because the evidence sometimes points to the contrary. Mm-hmm. And, the evidence, the universe supporting you does not mean you always get what you want and that things always go your way and that, everything appears to be good. That's the fallacy, which is, well, if the universe supported me, these 5 things would happen or would not have happened. And yet that's not sort of the ultimate love, because then you question, well, why are we even here? If we're here to learn and grow, then absolutely everything that's happening is for your highest growth. If you're here to have a good time and get everything you want, then sure, that might not be the plan for why you are here on this planet.
Yeah. And for you on your personal journey, when you started out, you're like, okay, I'm listening to Spirit, I'm moving ahead, I'm going to do these things. You started traveling. Was there some point where, because you were reading books and kind of really kind of following that, kind of learning more about what resonated with you spiritually, was there a point where you're like, gosh, I really can see how this is supposed to be now?
Oh, no. No. Still not today. I'm at least 10 years on from having left that life and that world. No, but I think that's the beauty. I think life would be really boring if I could see, and if I could see what was coming and what was next. But I'm shown what I need. So, I was pretty demanding of life and the universe to kind of show me the way, right? And that is a mantra that I very often say, show me the way, show me the way. But it doesn't mean, show me 5 years from now the way. It's like, show me right now, is this the right decision? Do I hire this person? Do I rent this apartment? Do I go to this place? So show me the way is always been there. And I feel like I'm met when I ask that. And I also don't kind of second guess when things don't appear to make sense. The other question that I kept asking, and I'm a big believer in asking questions because any question you ask, you will get an answer. So the better your question, the better the quality of the answer. But I would say, how can I serve? How can I help my fellow human beings? Because that was not what my question was in my previous sort of corporate life. It was me. How can I be more, make more, be promoted more, be more seen, be bigger, be special, be significant? And, that creates a lot of emptiness. So because I was so clear that that was the missing element in my spirit, the question of, show me how I can serve, show me who I can serve. Like, the universe is like, right here, right now, do this, do that, say yes to this. Like, do you see, I sort of became a willing participant in the plan for me as opposed to my plan.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that will give a lot of people some relief knowing that they don't have to know the entire plan, because I think a lot of people, when they start their spiritual path, at least I was doing this, I was like, man, I should have this all figured out by now. Why am I not being able to get everything, kind of mapped together? And I'm sure that's coming from a place of control because,
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And, so many of our strategies that are put in place when we're young kids are control strategies, are safety strategies, are performance strategies, because so many times performance is what got us love. And so when, as grown-ups, we're living based on, performance and safety and control, even just those three words, they're far from inspiring, and they're far from turning the heart and the spirit on, which is what we're all craving. And so, to me, the letting go, or at least catching yourself when you do need the control, you do need the safety, or you need to, be perfect, and you're beating yourself up for not being a perfect wife, mom, whatever, daughter. That's when there's sort of so much of my spiritual path is just the awareness of, there it is. Oh, I want this. Or, it's the awareness of 50% already. It's sort of more of a waking up than actually doing any spiritual practices. And also, your intention. Like, when I coach people, I always try and get them to sort of feel into what is their sort of daily intention or life intention. Mine is if I am in service on a daily basis, I'm going to have a good day. It might not be a great day, but I just know that the more I'm sort of there being and connected with other people, that's when the energy feels, good and true and beautiful.
I love that. And then you can really design how you would like your life to kind of turn out in some ways just by being, just kind of following spirit, being open, but also, you've got this very practical side where it's like, I still can work and I, can still eat, I don't have to go vegan. I can, do all these different things.
Have a glass of wine. Yep. And I think it's so important, it's funny, like I've got a book on my computer that will come out, I'd say, in the next year or two. It's called A Foot in Both Worlds. And it's really the journey of having those worlds both be possible, because I certainly was can I be really committed to my spiritual path and still, drink wine and, go travel and do this and go to these parties? And like, a part of me hadn't seen enough integrated people in the world. Like, the spiritual people were wearing white and they had necklaces and they had weird shoes, and I wasn't attracted to any of the men, and none of them had any money. And do you see? And it was just like, that was the first sort of opening, and they all did yoga, and I don't know if they ever worked because they were always around. And then there was this whole other set, super ambitious, change the world, successful, material. And I really feel the world now needs to sort of go, at least bring the material people out of the spiritual closet, because there are a lot more of them than we know about. There's lots of people at Google that I know. There's big, very famous lawyers that are very committed to their spiritual path. Very big book agent I know here, which it's just time to sort of open that up. I think the young people need to also know that, spirituality doesn't have to look one specific way.
No. No, and thank goodness for that, because you're so right. When I look at, people who were open spiritually, it's all the same things. Either they're, they seem to be very ungrounded, not really worried about anything in the material world, but at the same time, it's like you still have to pay your mortgage, your rent, your electricity, whatever it is, you're still responsible for those things because we have the human experience.
Absolutely. And that's what we're here to have. I believe, Spirit sends us down here to explore. Each one of us has a different exploring journey, but we're not here to reject the material world, and we're not here to sort of judge it or even judge people who are in it, because that's what's causing all the division. You're this and I'm that. You're spiritual, I'm material. And all of those labels and barriers and divisions spiritually, consciously on the planet need to start dropping. And just to recognize you're a human, I'm a human. You're making these choices, I'm making these choices. That already feels very different just in terms of the energy and the vocabulary.
Yeah, as opposed to that we're all here, having a spiritual experience in these human bodies, and it's kind of time for us to, that you always hear the quote, be the change. Be the change. Well, to embody that would be something that would make changes.
Yeah. And it needs to, for me, I think that it starts young, because when we pummel into children and young people that, the consensus consciousness or the mass consciousness, thinks this, believes this, is educated this way, marries this way, has these many children, makes the pressure on the spirit of a child, a teenager, a young adult is so strong to fit in, because one of the worst things I think for a soul, a human, is to be rejected, is to not fit in, is to not be part of a tribe, whether the tribe's your family, whether the tribe's men and women, whether the tribe's your sports team, your religion, but to not feel like you are accepted and part of the tribe is so painful. And anything that goes against the tribe, brings up a lot of fear, where the illusion of I'm not going to be part of something. And so people go and fit in, that's what I did. I got the right jobs. I went to business school. I did that, and I got engaged to a guy I thought my parents would like. And then there's sort of a wake-up call, and I think everyone's being woken up right now to sort of, find their own choice, find their own path, find their own joy, and knowing that the bigger tribe is just, the human and spiritual dimension. It's not just your family. My parents were not happy when I broke off my engagement and when I, gave up my big career. And that's their journey, that is their journey. I didn't take that on. And I think what a lot of us do is they start managing other people's feelings and lives and journeys and paths, where you have your own, So much of the spiritual path is self-responsibility. I am responsible. I'm responsible.
It is. And it's interesting when we start to mold our spiritual path towards the wants and needs of other people, just like how you were going through that experience of feeling so disconnected. And I think a lot of people, and that's before you made all these changes, I think a lot of people are resonating with that today, because we're going through this epidemic where people feel more alone than they've ever felt in their entire lives. I think it has something to do with all, being connected to these groups that they feel will give them something.
Yep. And I also, I speak personally, I think there's the aloneness is also the biggest disconnection, is just from love with the capital L. And that can be love, it can be God, your creator, the universe, life. Because when I have been disconnected from that, those have been the lowest moments of my life. It has not been disconnected from my family or a boyfriend or my, anything. It's when I feel like in some ways I have left, my spiritual connection because I'm mad at God or pissed off or, done with the hard stuff. That's when the aloneness really sets in for me. And then also just, people are filled with self-criticism, self-judgment, self-hatred. It's hard to sort of, feel good in the body that you're resting in when so much of it is negative. And, the spiritual journey is also one of just letting go of all the false perceptions of self, which is, you are beautiful and perfect, and there's nothing for you to do or be or change. You are perfect. And that is, I say that to my 4-year-old nightly. He's heard it since he was born. And, it's partly because I also need to hear it. Because he's like, yep. When I say to him, I go, what do you love about yourself? And he goes, everything. Can you imagine a grown-up saying that? We have these nightly questions at the table, and my husband and I are struggling to come up with 2 or 3 things. We're pretty conscious as a family, and my son Everest is like, I like everything. I like my hair, my nose, my teeth, my lips, my hair. But you see, it's there, it's born there, and something happens that they decide that they are not that anymore. And we need to get back to the purity of, removing the aloneness is that disconnection from the higher self and the disconnection of, your beautiful self. No one else is going to make you feel connected. It's not a person that needs to come into your life or be kind to you or start loving you again.
I love that story about your son and how well he knows, he's just perfect the way that he is. And, it's interesting, as adults, if we were to say something like that, for most people, either it resonates as, I don't really feel that, or I don't believe it, or if they do, other people will judge them, going, gosh, is that person full of themselves,
Yeah, yeah.
So it's interesting with kids, we're like, of course you're perfect,
Yeah, yeah. And, to me, my journey has just been to, acknowledge myself when I did something great. And it starts small. I made a great smoothie yesterday, and, I'm alone in the house. My husband's traveling, and I was like, wow, that's a great smoothie, Ariane. It really starts small. It really starts small. No one needs to know. Or, you know what, that looks really good on you today. Or, it's just, and again, I was telling my son about becoming your own friend. And, you can look for new friends at his new school, but it's you are your best friend. You will hang out with yourself until, God takes you back. You need to be your own best friend. And we need to, especially for those people who have kids, we need to embody that and represent that, because that the self-critical voice starts with observing other adults. It doesn't, start from inside of you.
That's so true. That is so true. And change can be really difficult for a lot of people. And I know you have a couple different communities that I'd love for you to share with us that help people kind of give them inspiration, kind of give them maybe some expert advice, help them through these changes that they're looking to create in their life.
Yeah. Well, one of the things, that came out of my journey out of corporate was everyone I was meeting was going through some form of change. Some were getting divorced, some had left jobs, some had been diagnosed with breast cancer, some had lost a parent. And I was just fascinated that really anyone you're sitting next to is going through some form of life change. And so I started noticing, and I started asking questions. What's the best change you've ever made? What's the hardest change you've ever been through? What's the change you'd love to make? And, what's in the way? And from that came a book. Again, I didn't know it would ever show up into a book. I did about 1,000 interviews of people all around the world. I didn't even record them. This wasn't sort of I'm going to start this blog and be this big person that does change stuff. But I was fortunate enough. It was covered, lots of magazines and TV. And the book is called The First 30 Days. And it's how to look at, a change in your life or many changes in your life, differently. And it's the lessons from the people that I interviewed that showed me how people successfully navigate change. Because change leaves clues. This might be your first divorce, or this might be the first time you're trying to quit smoking. But, millions of other people have been through it. And somehow we feel alone. We're the only one going through this. No one has ever felt this bad or eaten this much ice cream. And yet millions of people have gone through the experience. And there was no sharing of that personal story and the wisdom. So I started a website about 10 years ago now called First 30 Days, FIRST30DAYS.com. And we cover 50 of the top life changes. And there's personal stories, there's expert advice. I used to do a podcast where I interviewed experts on different life changes. And it's not my focus today anymore, although I still do a fair amount of personal coaching and group coaching with people who've done it. But the website's there. Everything's free other than the book.
Well, on that note, we are going to pause here for a quick break. We've been speaking with Ariane de Bonvoisin in regards to her new children's book series, You Are Loved, Giggles and Joy, and Being You. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. We'll be right back after these messages.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
There comes a moment when you realize you're somewhere special. When you discover that each beautiful creature that you see has been rescued from a life of absolute horror and brought to this incredibly free place. Here's where their lives were forever changed and where yours will as well. Discover over 500 tigers, bears, and lions at the brand new visitor center at the Wild Animal Sanctuary just outside Denver. For more information, visit wildanimalsanctuary.org. Discover true freedom at the Wild Animal Sanctuary.
Have you ever had the sense that your thoughts might actually be doing something? Ancient secrets of manifesting have been masterfully revealed in the award-winning book Manifesting 123 by Ken Elliott. For the first time, the author's experiences and stories in this book describe exactly how your thoughts can create anything. You've been doing this all your life, but it's never been fully explained for you until now. Visit manifesting123.com for more information today. Manifesting123.com.
There are nearly 2 million Americans living with amputation. Many live right here in San Antonio. Becoming an amputee can be scary, frustrating, isolating, but there's no reason to feel alone. The San Antonio Amputee Foundation is here to help support you and guide you toward resources such as home and car modifications and even prosthetic limbs. For more information or to make a donation, visit saamputee.org. We'll help you live a full, active life, one step at a time. San Antonio Amputee Foundation, healing limbs, hearts, and souls.
Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted that we're here with a very special guest today, Ariane de Bonvoisin, and she's sharing with us her new children's book series, You Are Loved, Giggles and Joy, and Being You. Now, Ariane, before we went for break, we were talking about change and also the work that you've been doing in change, your other books that you have available.
I found that it gave a lot of great advice for people. Maybe they're having difficulties with change in regards to families or finances, diet, relationships. I mean, you touch all the bases, and what I love is that, especially when we talk about like pursuing your dreams, you have kind of blazed a trail for people, giving them insights, by interviewing these different experts, letting them know how they can go from point A to point B.
Yeah, and it has to be very practical. We've had a lovely emotional, spiritual kind of conversation now, but it really has to be practical. It's like, what do I do when this happens? And even though change very much so is an emotional journey, because it's the emotions that make change hard. Practically, change is very easy. Getting divorced is easy. Quitting smoking is easy. Starting a business on the practical side is very easy. But people get very wrapped up in the, what do I do? How do I do it? When do I do it? And those questions, even though, of course, they need to be addressed, it's the fear and what I call the change demons, fear, doubt, blame, anger, sadness. The emotions are the one that gets in the way of the change journey. So there's a whole chapter in the book literally just on the change demons, because even the emotions of change are very predictable. You know they're going to show up to a change party. But yet what we all do is, fear shows up, and then you invite like it's 5 friends who are hanging behind the door as well to sort of join on the change journey, and they don't need to be there. You're like, okay, fear, I see you, welcome. I know you're going to be on the journey with me.
Mhm. And I'm sure it has something to teach, along the way.
Yep. Of course.
My experience, yeah. Well, what I love is, regardless of, I know that's not your main focus right now, but the information that's there, the information in your book is timeless, because whether it was, last year, 5 years ago, or today, people are still dealing with the same issues.
Absolutely. And, I still get asked to do workshops and speaking engagements at big companies, small companies, because change and transition is universal. And unfortunately, every single person I've ever met will say, change is hard. I hate change. Why do I need to go through this change, whether it's corporate or personal? And, my small contribution is to let people know that there are ways to make change easier. Not to remove change, but there are ways to make change easier, and that change from other people has left clues, whether it's, their beliefs, whether it's the people they're around, whether it's how they treat themselves, whether it's self-care while you're going through change. Health isn't one thing that goes out the window when you're going through change. So that was one of the surprising things in my research, which is when people are like, well, tell me one thing that, you learned. And people who are good at change take care of themselves. And if you don't, your change journey will be a lot harder.
Well, it's nice to know that change doesn't have to be hard. Some change obviously is, but not all change has to be.
Yep, absolutely. And there's no, sometimes we project other people's fear on a change. It's your mom and dad who are worried about you changing careers. It's not even your fear, right? Or it's, whoever, your friends are projecting onto you that you need to do this or you need to do that. So the sort of self-knowledge and the self-discovery of, what is really yours? Is this your fear? Is this your, is this your emotion? Or are you just picking it up because you're enmeshed with someone else?
It's so important to identify that, because then you can kind of offload it. If it's not my fear, I don't need to be carrying it,
Yeah. And, unfortunately, I think a lot of us as kids, it's sort of, we're either in the place of the rescuer, where we tried to rescue one of our parents, or we're in the performer, where we tried to perform for one of our parents, or we're in, the funny one, where we tried to be funny for one of our parents. And it's sort of, we're still carrying those things as grown-ups. Like you all know some of these people who fit into those categories. And it's so, for me, for example, to make a really empowered choice for myself, I cannot do it while I'm still in the rescuing position of rescuing my mother. Mm-hmm. Like, I need to have all that energy available for me and for the change in my identity. And what my mother, you stay loving, and you don't, abandon anyone you love through any change. But you just know that, just how we talked about life being your container and your safe space, like whether it's your parents or whoever else, life is also supporting them. Always, all the time. That is, it's never stopped. It's never removed. They also will be, taken care of.
And I think if we look at it that way, because, I'm not wise enough to know what the universe has in store for each soul on their journey. And so when we try to kind of manage the change for somebody else, instead of just kind of keeping our side of the street clean, so to speak,
yeah.
It kind of is saying, well, we know better than, as you as a soul, what you are capable of doing, the change that you'll be met with,
And you're removing their power. Right? You're removing their ability to sort of find their strengths and their guidance, their inner guidance. They also have an inner microphone that is telling them what they need to do for their life.
Yeah, and what's possible for them. Well, and so I also know that you have Mindful 365, and I'd love you to talk with us about that. I just downloaded it, and I've been playing around with it and love it.
Thank you. So Mindful 365 is an app available on both the Android, the Play Store, and the iTunes Store. And the idea behind that was, I've done a couple of decades now of the personal development work, spiritual work. I've had the privilege of having some time to read a lot of books, do a lot of retreats, do a lot of workshops, teach them, coaching. And I really felt that there was a need in the world to sort of pull all of that together for people who do not have time to read a 300-page self-help book or to go to a 3-day retreat, because they are in the world and they have busy lives. And so what I did is I sort of, for people who are committed to learning and doing some more of the inner growth while they're busy in the city with kids, in jobs, to give them something that could accompany them throughout their day, in their pocket, on their phone, on their own time, using technology, private if they needed it to be private. So it's a daily inspirational tip, question, paragraph, action to take that helps you keep growing. And it's like having, sort of guidance in your pocket. We send you the paragraph either first thing in the morning or at whatever time you feel you can look at it. We send you a reminder in the afternoon. And there are, mindful content on everything, relationships to parents, relationships to yourself, your higher purpose, your health. So it's basically the best of everything that I've found, seen, heard, and collected in a way that's incredibly accessible. These are for people who are deeply on a spiritual path and really want to continue, and they're for people who, wouldn't be seen dead on a meditation cushion, even if you gave them a hamburger. Like, I've had people from all walks of life. I've had people in the corporate world just love it because it's the beginning of their journey. The first mindful practice starts off with, what do you spend your day thinking about? And then there's a whole thing about how when you could even just start watching the mind and what it keeps having you think about, that is when you can start having a bit more control over it. There's a journaling function. You can take notes if you want. But yeah, I'm very proud of that. It's come at a time, I feel, where the world needs something. A part of me was a bit resistant to put it on technology. And then I thought, you know what? No, this is part of being integrated and having a foot in both worlds, which is this is the device that people are using these days. So this is where the content needs to be.
Well, and so is this good for all age groups?
Yes, absolutely. I would say a 10-year-old could start with it. There's nothing offensive. And, older people who are curious and it's like, wow, this is, a multi-billion-dollar industry. What's all the fuss about? I think, any age group, I'd say, in the thousands of downloads we've had, I haven't looked at age because we don't ask for it, but it's very split 50-50 between men and women.
That's amazing. Well, I know it's given me some great insights, and I can't recommend it enough. I think people would really enjoy Mindful 365. It's in the App Store. There's a little fee for it, but it's nothing to really worry about because, my goodness, it just gives so much great information. I really appreciated having something like that I can just kind of go through.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, and I know because you've got so many wonderful things you're working on, and we have your children's books, Giggles Away, and I would love. So, how did you go from what this beautiful mindful consciousness to children's books?
Well, so much of my work is helping grown-ups with some form of life skills or life tools or changes, and whether it's the one-on-one work I've done or the larger work I've done, so much of what we struggle with as adults started when we were kids. I think it was Dr. Bruce Lipton. He said something like, perceptions acquired by the age of 6 become the dominant programs that shape the character of an individual's life. And it just kept coming back. And, I have a kid who's about to be 5, and so I'm right in that age group. And I've been really making it up on the spot of how do I raise a conscious child? How do I, how do I as a family create sort of a place for spirituality in some ways to be in first place? And I think all of that together and a real desire to sort of help the tiny humans of the world and to give them a voice and to also help just exhausted parents and grandparents and teachers who are all trying to do their best. Like, how can I serve? Like, literally, what can I do to help? And so I took a lot of the life skills that I teach for grown-ups and I sort of put them into words that, I'd say 3 to 7-year-olds will understand. And I looked at what are the life skills that we most need to be teaching our little ones. And even though, parents know them intuitively, how do you teach a child courage? How do you teach a child gratitude? How do you teach a child that it's okay to be sad? It's okay to be mad? How do you teach them beauty or that the world is a safe place? How do you teach them self-kindness, self-compassion, not only kindness towards others? Those were my questions. And I was fortunate enough to sort of, sit and download and, bring in a lot of this content and find a beautiful illustrator that kind of took the quite deep words and sort of turned them into illustrations that children love. You've got like elephants farting and you've got penguins with ice creams, with parachutes and snakes on skateboards. And like it's very light for the child to sort of come into their own spiritual nature while, a grown-up or even an older sibling are reading them. But there are 3 books. The first is Giggles and Joy. The second is You Are Loved. And the third is Being You. And, there were 3 really things that I felt were important, which is for children to remember the importance of giggles and joy, and grown-ups, of course. You Are Loved was really about love not being conditional, not being attached to anything, any way of being. And Being You was about allowing them to have their own path here. So every book has 8 different life skills. Some of them are just 2 pages, some of them are 4 pages. I tell a lot of parents that sometimes it's great to let the child choose because you'll get a sense of what might be going on for them. It's a beautiful entry point into a deeper conversation. You do one on intuition or you do one on there's one called Bye Bye Bad Day. And you learn about your child's bad day, which sometimes we don't allow our kid to have a bad day. Or, we kind of soothe it over. No, but you really want to understand why they had a bad day. So it's a lovely way to create more intimacy with your child's inner world, not just finding out, what happened at school.
And gosh, couldn't we use more of this right now, especially, overall, there's so much turmoil in the world. And of course it filters down to the kids, whether they understand what's going on or not. And so I really appreciate your books because when you talk about spiritual life lessons for kids, it gives them an outlet to go, gosh, I want to read this section, or I want to go ahead and focus on this part, or just kind of learn a little bit about this. And I really enjoyed the books because of that. I thought it gave
Thank you.
Yeah.
And, it's important. Like a lot of people have said, oh, what do you mean by spiritual? And there's so much focus on the child's mind and the child's body. And, it really, every religion talks about mind, body, spirit. And I just want to put the spirit component of children really back into the conversation because, being with what's below the neck, their heart, their spirit, their soul, even their body. So many kids are just walking around where the only thing that's valued is their head and their neck and their brains. And you become very disconnected. And I know those grown-ups that are very much in their head and mind because it's the only thing that's ever been valued. And to me, this is more, it's more what, Mandela and Mother Teresa and Gandhi would have taught children. So they coexist perfectly with pretty much, any religion. I've been lucky enough to do readings at all different types of schools. And this is what is universal. There are skills on prayer because a lot of people pray, and I want children to understand the power of prayer and that there's, people pray to different things and nothing is better or worse or judged and they will see those kids in their class. But what an amazing thing to have understanding as opposed to question or division or, better than or worse than. that's what I feel like the world needs more of. It needs more understanding of what's universal and what's the same as opposed to what's different.
Yeah. And when kids understand that prayer is just a conversation, you know, it's a conversation to the universe, Father, God, whatever they, decide that is. I mean, it becomes a very personal journey that they can start their life on at a very early age. And I applaud you for including that in your book.
Yeah. And, I mean, we say prayers at night, and, I always get my son to pray for a special person or a special thing. And, it's amazing. Sometimes he'll pray for homeless people or the people who are sick or the people who are alone, or sometimes he'll pray for my mother-in-law's dogs. But you see, it gives him an outlet to not only let me know what's on his mind or what is there for him. So much of this is about just creating in some ways a safe space for you and your child or grandchild to sort of take an inner journey together. I've had a lot of parents say, wow, my kids really calm down when I read these stories, which is such a lovely thing. I mean, if I can create a bit more calmness and inner peace for parents, I feel like that's success.
Well, and, and some of these, spiritual life lessons are probably things that the grandparents, parents, nannies, babysitters, whoever's reading these books with these children or to them, that they're learning themselves, because not everyone has picked these up over the course of their lifetime.
Oh, yeah. And, that's been something I've been asked a lot, and I've been creating now an online course for parents, grandparents, caretakers, because when you don't have those skills, it's hard to read them and then go and do something else, the minute you go into the kitchen. So, how do we sort of uplift the generation that is teaching our children, as opposed to just telling them what's wrong or what's missing or what they need to be doing? So that'll be on the Giggles and Joy website in the fall. Because, it's a team effort. It's sort of, someone asked me yesterday, what's your favorite poem or life skill? And I said it was the Being You poem, because that was the one that I most needed as a child, and a lot of love was conditional on performance and doing certain things, and I needed to be told that was not going to define my life. And so that's the one I gravitate to, and whenever I read it, I do get teary-eyed, because I'm reading it to my 5-year-old, not only, my son. I've had a lot of people who, read Bye Bye Bad Day, and, they also go on their own journey because they've had a really tough day. And there's sort of a real sweetness of sort of you also sharing your bad day with your child. It's really important for the child to know that happens, you recover, you also can be sad, you have the full range of life and emotions and human experiences so that they can too.
Yeah, so they can understand. I mean, if you're the role model, it's good to have books like your book so that they can at least instill these same traits and these life skills in the young people or next generation.
Yeah. There's one on breathing, and, the Take a Deep Breath. The illustrations are all about going to school and being at school and things happening at school, and it's really important to teach kids to breathe and to teach them why they need to breathe. And when your brain gets fizzy or when you're upset or scared, you don't have enough oxygen, your brain needs the oxygen, and, your superheroes inside of you, for them to get strong, they need oxygen. Like, you do it in a way where a child understands. And, I mean, my son loves breathing. We do it every day before we walk into school to take a deep breath, energize ourselves. It becomes something fun and playful as opposed to, we've got to sit and take some deep breaths. And it's also a way, when a child doesn't do something that it should or misbehaves, you can go to breathing. You can go, let's come and sit down. We're going to take 3 deep breaths, 7 deep breaths. Your body needs it. Where it's not about them in some ways. You're giving them a tool to recover.
To be able to use, I know some adults that can use a breathing thing. So I'm
absolutely. I've had my son tell me to take a deep breath, and I want to yell at him because he's absolutely right. He's like, "Mom, breathe, take a deep breath, do a lion breath or do a dinosaur breath." And I'm like, he's so right. They become your teachers, and it's great because they are, they're there to heal us, and we're there to, empower them on their journey.
Well, and isn't that the truth? Because we all don't have it all together. We haven't arrived yet. And there's no, sitting on the top of the mountain going, hey, I've got all the information I'm ever going to need in my lifetime. So having those moments where your children are working with you to kind of go, hey, breathe, remember to breathe. I mean, those are wonderful little signs in our road saying, they're so right, take a breath.
Yeah, yeah. And it's amazing, when I see people who've read the books sort of over and over, like kids learn them by heart. I'd say half of them rhyme, half of them don't. And there's something that happens for the kid where they like knowing that they've learned it, and not only sort of learned it with their head, but they remind you of something in the Giggles and Joy books. And I find it extraordinary when, you have two siblings, for example, and one of the older siblings takes out a book and sort of goes, come over here, we're going to read this. And for any parents who struggle with kids who don't sleep, these are really good for getting children to just doze off with, some form of inspiration to sort of fall asleep to.
Oh, my goodness. Isn't that something that's important? Because if a kid's not sleeping, no one's sleeping.
Yeah, and there's no happy, conscious household.
Yeah. There's, so to have something that kind of gets them in the pattern of, okay, it's sleeping time, and, and to go through that chapter, I think is a good theme for them to kind of like, hey, I'm going to go sleep like it says in my book,
Yeah, and my big point is the earlier and the younger you can sort of bring life skills to your children in a way that they get it, they understand, or even just reminded of, because I do believe most kids have probably all of these innately within them. It's just they're seeds. You need to water them. You need to acknowledge them. You need to congratulate them when they use their intuition. You need to acknowledge them when they are kind to themselves, not only to others. We're obsessed with building up kind children, but kindness towards themselves will determine the course of their life, because I get to deal with the self-hating, self-critical, self-judging adults all the time, and trying to infuse, the truth in that, which is what children know already so well. So, yeah, I mean, I've had people buy the whole set as baby shower gifts. I had one mom who was reading them to her baby in utero. It was like, I just want to make sure this kid knows that it's completely safe here on the planet, and there's a lot of love for it here.
Hey, it's never too early to start, right?
Yeah, or too late. Some people are like, oh, my God, my kid's 7. And I was like, oh, no, there's a lot in here for a 7-year-old. Not only can the 7-year-old read it themselves, but there's a lot there for, older children too.
Well, and I'm sure, a lot of adults are waiting for the adult version, the course to come out, because, I mean, it's interesting how many of us go through life not learning different life skills that most people would think, oh, you should have known this by now, or you should have this. And it's all just based on the information our parents were given.
Yeah. That's exactly right. And so many of us, I didn't have an easy childhood on the parenting side. My parents didn't like each other. And, when I became a parent, I really had to do my own coaching and inner work with my teacher to look at, so what was I going to do here? Was I going to do what was opposite to my parent? Was I going to reparent myself through my child, which is what a lot of people do? Was I going to overparent? Was I going to underparent? There's all different ways of parenting, which I do touch upon in the course. And, I wanted to parent in a way which wasn't fixing my childhood, which wasn't blaming my own parents and doing something completely different, but sort of was a sort of natural, again, integrated path, and what was appropriate and right for the child that I had, as opposed to, this is the way. Because every child is different.
And they have different needs, and they show up differently.
Yeah.
Well, and, where can people connect with you in regards to your children's books? Where can they go to learn more about that and order the books?
So the website for the books is gigglesandjoy.com. And and we've got parents talking about them and endorsements from lovely people like Oprah's parenting expert gave us a lovely endorsement, and we're very fortunate. Goldie Hawn, who has all the mindful schools, says, if I could give these to all the children, I would. If you're sure you don't even need to see the website, you can go straight to Amazon, of course. You can get them as an individual book if you're like, let me just try one out and see how it is. There's also a gift set where you can buy all three. They're currently on sale as a gift set. I just want to make sure people can get them and they're accessible. And I also say to any, teachers out there who might not have the budget, if you want to email us, we certainly give out a lot of free books to schools and community centers. And my website is arianestudio.com. That's arianestudio.com. And there's a contact button on there. I read the emails. I get back to people. If you want coaching, one-on-one, anything. And that's where the course will also be posted. And I have a TED Talk coming out in October on life skills we must be teaching our kids.
Oh, that's amazing. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Wait to see that. And you have so many wonderful resources that help people along their journey, regardless if they're adults, if they're children. And so I'm so appreciative that we've been able to spend this time talking about that. Before I let you go, though, I do want to talk about your coaching, because I know you're insanely busy with all these wonderful things that you're doing. If someone's looking to work with you, do they have to be in your geographical area? Is it something that's done over Skype? How does that work?
Yeah, it's over Skype. I was living in South Africa as of last year, and some people never even knew that. So it works beautifully. We love technology. I do like doing it visually over Skype because I feel like when you see someone, there's unconscious cues that I get, and I can get a sense for people. But I coach people in London and Australia and South Africa and Dubai, all around the world. And, it's everyone is welcome in coaching. Like, some people are like, well, I'm not an executive, or I don't even have a business, or I've never done this, or I'm a terrible parent, or none of that matters. Like, I reach people from a place that they're at now. I get some clarity as to, when they're stressed, what is it most often about? Or, when their mind is running, what is the mind telling them? Or why are they not sleeping? Or if they want to be sure of like one thing being different. And I really get very clear on, what is going to make that big difference. And very often it's something internal, even though it might appear like they want to fix something external in their life, but the inner world always informs the outer. So that we start there, and usually it's a 3-month commitment. I don't need people forever and ever because people have limited budgets and limited time. And I coach people for anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half, depending on their availability.
I think that's perfect because it is about getting people to that next plateau in their spirituality, so they can take the information that they have and move on. And you're making such a huge ripple in the world with all the information that you have out there to help people make those transformations. Ariane, I just really applaud you for all the work that you're doing.
Thanks, Marianne. And thank you for giving us, a conversation and a place where we can share what we're doing. And the world's a big place, and you certainly make it feel smaller and intimate. And I've loved your questions, and it's been wonderful.
Thank you, Ariane. It's such a pleasure to spend this time with you today, and of course to talk about your new books, You Are Loved, Giggles and Joy in Being You, and of course all the fabulous work you're doing. Just keep up that great work. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Thursday, Friday, and Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.